Hey guys, Andre from the High Performance Academy. Welcome to Tuner Life. We're coming to you live from Las Vegas. We've been at the Sema show all this week. We've got a great show with a whole lot of really cool content. We've got Scott Cooner here from Insight Motorsports, all the way from Sydney, Australia. And before we get started, I just wanted to explain the concept of Tuner Life. Now, if you're interested in big shiny wheels, flashy paint jobs and promo models, this probably isn't the show for you. We're into hardcore tuner technical information, and that's what we're going to be talking about, particularly with Scotty here. Now, the other thing we've got though is some really interesting features on some products that we found at Sema, some brand new products that are just starting to break ground, and also we've got some technical tours of some really awesome cars. So tonight on the show, we've got a technical tour of the Nelson Race Engines 2000 horsepower Charger. We're going to have a look at a really cool vdub hill climb car all the way from the UK. We're also going to have a look at a 700 horsepower Camaro that looks like a show car, yet it's driven hard like it should be. So before we go into any of that though, let's check out some of the products that we found at Sema over the last day and a half. Check out Tuner News now. Ditchworks are displaying one of their brand new prototype products, which is a high flow GDI injector. Now this technology is still very new, and Ditchworks are probably one of the first companies anywhere to be modifying these injectors. At the moment they're supporting the Bosch HDEV5 GDI injector, and basically they're modifying the standard injector and they're allowed around about an extra 30% of flow over the stock injector. So this is going to be great for supporting those GDI cars that are being modified and the stock injectors aren't able to keep up. At the moment these products are expected for release in around 2014. They're at the moment in a prototype R&D stage. They've got them in a few cars for prototyping and testing purposes. We'll be interested to see how this technology comes out next year. ViPEC have just released their brand new plug-and-play ECU for the Polaris RZR side-by-side quad. Now this ECU replaces the stock ECU, but it gives complete tunability via the ViPEC VTS software. It also supports boosted applications for those fitting superchargers or turbochargers, and gives you all of the motorsport functionality such as launch control that the ViPEC software is already known for. Autometer are here and they're promoting their brand new and yet to be released to the public full colour dash display. Now this is a product that they've developed in conjunction with McLaren for the NASCAR series. They're replacing all of their existing analog gauges with this one digital display. The digital display can talk via CAN to other ECUs and other products, as well as taking in another 10 analog inputs from other sensors that you may want to add. It allows for full data acquisition, and they're expecting it to release in 2014 to the street car public. Estimated price point is around the $4,500 US mark. Ditchworks are one of the products that we looked at there was the new Ditchworks direct injector modifications to the Bosch injector, and that's something I think is going to become really important over the next few years as people start modifying these GDI engines. Now, I want to just give a quick plug to our sponsors. I'd like to thank ViPEC for bringing you the show tonight. You can check out their new i-series of ECUs at vipec.com. Also, big props to GT Channel for letting us stream live. If you want to check out the coolest car videos on the internet, make sure you subscribe to GT Channel. If you like what you see here, also make sure you subscribe to us. Just search out Learn to Tune on YouTube. Now the first video we've got tonight, we caught up with Tom Nelson from Nelson Race Engines. Now Nelson Race Engines are pretty well known across the internet for building some of the wildest and coolest high horsepower twin turbo V8 cars anywhere. He's got a real eye for detail, a real attention sort of to detail, and these things look absolutely sick and punch out some mad numbers. So let's check out this Charger that he's built. Hey guys, it's Andre from the High Performance Academy. We're here with Tom Nelson from Nelson Racing Engines. Now Tom's really well known for producing some of the most badass high horsepower twin turbo street cars around. They're all over YouTube. Everyone's seen them, and we really love his style. So Tom, we're here to talk about your 68 Charger, and we want to know a little bit about what makes it tick. So I guess if we can start with the power plant, that's obviously the most important part. Talk us through that engine and what makes it tick.
Well, I mean, it's an all-alloy 572 Hemi, so it's all aluminum. We've twin turbocharged it And over the years, it's a package that we developed. So we've done, 50 odd of these twin turbo Hemis. So this motor is something that you'll be able to drive anywhere you want. It's neat. It's got a fully all billet valve cover. So we made it, CNC machine the cover from stock, and then we put the coil wires in, and then we have a coil wire cover that the wires come out the back, so you don't even see the spark plug wires. Intake's got a new billet intake design where we've done all sorts of drilled orifices, really thin in the back of the manifold for firewall clearance, and came and took the regulators out at 45 degrees each on both sides. But it's all drilled orifices with O-ring ports, so it boost references, and it's slick. When you see it, you really like it. It's got twin water-to-air intercoolers. It's got a heat exchanger for those intercoolers. It's got our classic anteater snout with dual blow-off valves. And it's just something it's probably one of the sexiest, badass-looking motors. We anodized it all black and then shaved off with like stainless accents and nickel and stuff.
Let's just talk a little bit about that sort of street rod style, the real smooth, sort of no wiring, everything's hidden. Obviously, we're in the modern day with EFI, which you've embraced fully. How much harder has that made your job trying to get rid of all of these wires and trying to make the engine bay look so smooth and clean?
Well, I think that's always been my deal. I think that's why I've kind of, you look at my stuff, it doesn't look like it runs. Like we have hidden throttle linkage and hidden wires, and all the injectors are hidden on the inside, and the wiring harness, the whole harness comes out of a single Deutsch going into a bulkhead, and there's no hard lines going in for boost referencing and everything. So it's a challenge to do that, but it's neat. It's a pain in the ass to work on. Like for a race car, it sucks, but for a street car where you're never touching it, there's nothing sexier than that. It doesn't look like it runs. It's simple. Anytime you can make it really good and be simple, I think you're doing good.
Let's talk about power. So you've got twin turbos there, 572 cubic inches. It's running on pump fuel. What sort of power is it producing?
They're great. I think their ignition circuit it's unlike any other company's ignition circuit. We've noticed a 50% increase in bearing life when we started using it. So there's all sorts of misfires that you can't hear or see.
Did we lose that?
We're live now.
Looks like we just had some problems with that stream. Sorry about that. That video of Tom Nelson's Charger there, it's an insane car, and we really appreciate it, even though it's obviously not finished. One of the interesting things about that car, we were talking to Tom a little bit after that, and there were over 1,500 man hours went into the metal work on that body alone. And one of the features of the car that I'm pretty stoked about as well is the whole fuel tank is machined out of one piece of billet aluminium, and I think there were 150 hours with that fuel tank in the machining centre just to make it. So moving on, we've got Scott here from Insight Motorsport over in Australia, and we caught up with him, as I said, at World Time Attack just recently. And Scott, you're the tuner of the Tilton Interiors Evo, which decimated the competition just recently at World Time Attack, set a new lap record and was basically untouchable. So that's a pretty awesome achievement. Let's roll it back a little bit though. Can you talk to us about how you got involved with tuning? What's your background?
Well, my background is electrical engineering, so I was involved with companies designing coin counting machines and note counters. So
it's about as far away from tuning as you can get, right?
Yeah, very far.
Wow.
But my love since I was born was cars, so I pretty much spent my whole life in the garage working on them, building engines and so forth. And
yep.
And in my profession, I was doing the electronic side of things as well. So the two merged together, and I got my first engine management system, and here we are now.
Now, I'll just mention as well, at the end of this interview, or at the end of the show, we're going to have a tuner chat session with Scott. So if anyone out there has got some questions that they want to put to Scott, feel free to put them in the comments. We're going to address those at the end of the show, so we can ask Scott any of those questions you've got, and we'll get his feedback directly. So, okay, you've got an engineering background now. It's interesting because over the last two shows as well, we've had basically every tuner that's come on this show has an engineering background, and I'm just trying to say that's not an essential, correct? You don't have to be an engineer to become a tuner.
It's not essential at all. It's just maybe a common feeling with tuners.
I mean, there's obviously a technology aspect to tuning, and I guess that goes hand in hand with kind of that academic background, an engineering background, and understanding how the engine works. But yeah, definitely not an essential. So
No, not an essential, no.
Let's move on. You've got that background and you're interested in cars. How did you end up going from that to Insight Motorsport?
Well, what I did is my hobby was cars, and every day I'd come home from work and I'd work on my own car. And it was when I first got an engine management system, and I got it for a very small fee of $300.
Wow.
And I had to make my own wiring harness for it because I couldn't afford to buy the harness. So I wired it with parts that I borrowed from the boss at work, including some of the connectors.
Yep.
And I got it fired up, and it ran, and I was very happy. And I had a rough idea of what I needed to do because I'd done a lot of tuning in terms of carburetors and distributors and so forth. So I just applied the same knowledge, and then I sort of moved my electronics knowledge along with that. And I basically borrowed a meter, an air fuel ratio meter from a friend, and put it in my car, and I already knew how to use it, so I just applied it electronically with the laptop that I had. And it was a 386 DX laptop, Toshiba.
Wow. I think that might even be before my time.
Yeah,
wow.
So, and I got the tune done, and it went quite well in the end, yeah.
So that first ECU you had, what brand were you using back then?
It was a MoTeC E6.
Okay.
It was a black and white screen. It was second hand when I got it.
Yeah.
And it worked a charm.
Now, one of the things that I've sort of noticed over the time I've been involved in the industry is the technology has advanced so far, and back when I first got into it, we were using piggyback computers and trying to manipulate factory ECUs to kind of cope with what we needed. How have you seen the advancements in EFI technology help us as tuners?
I think that when I first tuned a car, there was only a limited number of settings available to you, and there was limited data acquisition. So you had a meter and a few simple engine parameters that you had to sort of look across, and it made the engine run. And then as time went on, vehicles became so much more advanced, and there was a window there where us as tuners, we really couldn't even get involved in that because there just wasn't enough engine management in the aftermarket technology to make the changes that you would need to do. So there was a bit of a period where engine management didn't go very far from that technical aspect. And then as time went on, I think the technology became, it just really accelerated fast, and I could consider myself a very good tuner a long, long time ago. And then I got to the point where I realised, well, I don't know anything. I just was so far behind what I really, really needed to know.
Sure.
And engine management manufacturers realised this probably later than they should have, and now you're just required to know a lot more as a basic tuner.
Yeah. I mean, cars are only getting more complicated. We've got
They're getting so much more complicated.
drive-by-wire throttle, multiple cam control, knock control, boost control. So, everything is getting more complicated. I guess from our perspective, though, we've now got a bunch of manufacturers coming on board with some really top-level gear that can actually do the job exceptionally well.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the reasons we got you on the show was to talk about time attack, and you had a lot of success over at World Time Attack just recently in Sydney with the Tilted Interiors Evo. What I wanted to talk to you about was basically the electronics package on that car. So what went into that Tilted Interiors Evo to actually make the engine run?
Well, basically the electronics package is completely a MoTeC based system. And it's an integrated system, so it's not just engine management. It runs an M800 MoTeC, and that's only part of the picture. It's a very small part of the picture. It has a PDM, which...
So it's a power distribution module for those who don't know MoTeC speak.
Which handles all the control of all the electronic devices in the vehicle.
Yep.
An ADL3 dash, which is their top of the range unit, which allows us to oversee any number of devices and CDI ignition systems and all the normal things you'd expect to see in a high-performance race car.
Now, like this time attack racing, particularly that single event World Time Attack, it's kind of polarized that type of racing around the world, and it's becoming a massive congregation. You're seeing teams come from the USA, from Europe, from Japan to compete there, and it's kind of that one level playing ground where everyone can compete. Now, what I'm seeing as well is it's gone far beyond that kind of sport where Joe Bloggs can come along with his Evo and go out there and probably be competitive. You know, we've got guys now spending serious coin on these cars, and you know, the last 2 years we've seen 2 Evos. We've had Nemo and now Tilton. Both have gone much faster around there than any four-door sedan has ever done before. What's the technology in these cars that's allowing that to happen?
Well, I guess it's best to give you a bit of history.
Sure.
I was involved in World Time Attack since the moment it began, and it was with Tilton Interiors.
Mm-hmm.
And we won. I think we came third on the first year, and we won the year after.
Mm-hmm.
And it was with a very, very basic system.
Yeah.
The car was like a Club Sprint entry level car with a lot of horsepower, and we were able to win. So now it's evolved, obviously, and I think that countries coming into Australia, I think, showed us that this is what you need to win time attack. And it doesn't take much to give an Australian a little bit of a, well, wow, that's what you need to do, and we'll sort of go and do our homework and we'll put some effort in. So now the technology that you need is really getting to a higher level motorsport. Earlier on, it was a more, I would say, a performance shop based type thing, where if you're a performance shop, you could build a car, you could go to the racetrack, you could run in the World Time Attack, well, we called it the World Time Attack, but it was a really super lap in Australia with Australian cars, and you could win the event. And now that, I wouldn't say it's impossible, nothing's impossible, but it's very, very difficult.
Okay, so let's talk about probably one of the buzzwords that we're seeing. Aero, let's be honest. And I mean, okay, we're taking a little bit away from the tuning side of things. I want to come back to that. There's a few more things I want to touch on. But aero now is really so critical. And I mean, one of the things, I mean, it's not about the Tilton car, but it's just a number that I had put to me. The Nemo car last year when that won, so it went faster around Eastern Creek than any sedan had gone before. And I believe it was 2 seconds a lap quicker than a V8 supercar, which is kind of a pretty good benchmark.
I think you'll find it's quite a bit more.
Oh, it was quite a bit more, okay.
It's actually around about 6 seconds.
6 seconds, okay, that's huge. And yet I also understand that it was actually slower at the end of the front straight than a V8 supercar, also quite a substantial amount. And that just shows that aero drag, but I guess the advantage is it doesn't need to really slow down so much. It's holding that cornering speed. So from your perspective, how critical is that aero package if you want to build a competitive car?
I think in time attack, it is very, very critical. And I think the car, certainly based on the way the rules are written, that aero should be the first place to possibly look at least at a design stage of where you should be with the car, and then you can build the mechanics around it. We didn't do that. We built a car, and as you normally would build a car,
added aero basically
added
to it.
Aero, and then it sort of evolved. And then this year, our friends at Voltex just went ballistic on it. But it wasn't the right way to go around about building a time attack car. But
you evolved the car, and it obviously worked.
We evolved it, and it worked. But yeah, certainly aero's massively important.
Now, I mean, I know that car went to Japan and Voltex developed that package on the car. Now, they've even put it in a wind tunnel, which, I mean, at that level of the sport, you know, that's almost unheard of. We've heard of engineers from McLaren F1 helping out some of the teams and things along that line. So it's really taking it to the next level. And you know, we've also heard of guys quoting downforce figures of around about 14 to 1500 kilograms at 100 mile an hour, which again is, you know, you could drive these cars upside down. It's no wonder they go around corners. Let's take it back to the tuning side of things, though. Talking about the data acquisition side of Superlap or World Time Attack, how critical is that for you as a tuner to improve the car and make it quicker?
It's very critical, and in the case of our car, we generally have limited time with the tuning side of things, because it's travelling all around the world, getting things done to it, like aerodynamic packages, and then getting itself back together again and getting its clothes on. So we basically, our goal is to get the vehicle tuned to a basic level of operation. It gives us enough to go out and do some testing with the car.
Yeah.
And historically, the Australian way is last minute motorsport. So we
I think
usually,
that's not the Australian way, that's motorsport in general.
and we turn up to the track literally days before the event.
Sure.
With an unproven package, and that's where the tuning really starts. So the data acquisition is like massively important for this, because we develop it over a number of days to get to where we do.
So your development really isn't being done so much on the dyno, you're really actually doing that on the track, so you're relying solely on that data acquisition. That's really, that's the key to you.
Back in the early years of Time Attack, I was be able to be issued a car and given maybe a couple of days with the car, and I could perform the tune, I could do some creative things with it. And then you get a job done, and you could take it out and race the car.
Yeah.
And today, with all the exotic parts that are on the car, I'm given a time limit. So these parts are ultra expensive. So you can't just sort of spend 2 days on the dyno with this car that's
wearing out
wearing
out a race
and
motor,
wearing
basically.
out a race motor, and maybe not so much the motor. The motors they're almost disposable in Time Attack, but certainly other components on the vehicle, drivetrain components, that we've just got to be careful of. So I've got to try to come up with a result as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So my job is to get a car able to drive on a racetrack.
Okay.
And then once we get to there, then we spend a lot of time in the air conditioning room upstairs, making changes and sending changes back, and talking to the mechanics and getting the tune ready for the race.
Okay, look, I want to continue talking a little bit about this. We're just going to take a little break though, and we're going to go to a quick video that we shot today at Sema. One of the cars that definitely caused a stir out there in the tuning world. We were hoping tonight to have John Reid from John Reid Racing along to talk about his tuning experience with the underground racing Lamborghini Aventador, one of the first twin turbo conversions on an Aventador anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, it looks like he's stuck in that amazing Las Vegas traffic, probably somewhere in a cab, clocking up a huge bill. If he gets here, that'd be great. Otherwise, let's check out that video of the Aventador anyway, and let John explain what he had to do to make that car tick.
Hey guys, it's Andre from the High Performance Academy, and we're here with John Reid from John Reid Racing. Now, John's probably got one of the most envious jobs out there. He's known worldwide as a supercar tuner, and we're here with Underground Racing's brand new twin turbo Aventador. Now, John, you've tuned this Aventador. Let's go back to the basics. How did you move from tuning cars into tuning supercars?
Sort of right place at the right time, I guess. Just was at Underground doing another car, a Viper for them, and they were just starting on the Gallardo program, and I do a lot of MoTeC stuff. One thing led to another. We put a MoTeC on one of their first Gallardos, and here we are.
It's not a bad deal. Okay, let's look at the car a little bit, this Aventador. Talk us through what it's got. So, you know, these aren't exactly a slouch out of the factory, right? So, twin turbos, what sort of turbos is it running?
It's running twin precision turbos and a fully built engine by Underground Racing Turbo Kit. All the usual bits, fuel system, of course, and stuff. So
the engine itself, so you say that it was built in stock form, it wouldn't have supported a boosted application?
It would probably support some, but not to the levels that we intend to push this car.
Okay, so the power it's making, can you tell us what it is producing?
Right now it's making around 1,200 or so on just normal pump gas.
And have you got an option for turning that up if the owner wanted to run on a race fuel?
We eventually will. It'll probably be 1,500, 1,600, maybe more. So we'll see where the platform goes.
That's absolute insanity. And when you're making that sort of power in an Aventador, do you have a lot of work to do with the transmission, maybe the drivetrain, to support that kind of power increase?
Yeah, absolutely. The clutch, of course, needs work, gearbox, drivetrain. So they have packages depending on how much power the guys want and what they're doing with the car. So lots of different options there.
Let's talk about the tuning of it. How do you approach that?
just like any other car, really. For me, it's just an engine. So we're using the new MoTeC M1 on this. For that, we wrote our own firmware for it and doing some cool stuff with that. So added a new level of difficulty, but.
Now that's really to integrate with what is now a seriously complicated car. Everything's integrated, everything's talking together, and the M1 allows you to handle that. Yes.
Yep, allows us to do that. Work properly with the gearbox. We can do some strategies, different things that we haven't been able to do before. So it's pretty exciting what we can do with this that we haven't been able to do in the past. So.
In terms of the actual tuning process, what are you doing there? Are you using an engine dyno, or is this being dynoed on a chassis dyno?
Typically just a chassis dyno, and then of course, being a street car, we need to make sure it works properly in all conditions. So we do a lot of street testing and stuff with it as well, make sure it drives good in traffic, all that good stuff.
So that's got to be a pretty hard day when you wake up and have to take a 1200 horsepower Aventador out for a street tune.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
John, it's got to be a tough life being you. I'm totally envious. Maybe I'm in the wrong career, but congratulations on your work with the Aventador, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to have a chat with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys coming out.
Hey.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Tuner Life. I'm Andre from the High Performance Academy. I want to thank ViPEC for sponsoring our show tonight. You can check out the new I-Series range of ECUs at vipec.com. Also a big thanks to GT Channel for letting us stream live tonight on their channel. If you want to check out all the coolest car videos on the internet, make sure you check out GT Channel and subscribe to them. If you're interested in learning more about EFI and EFI tuning, make sure you check us out, High Performance Academy. You can go to learntotune.com. Now we'll come back to Scott. So that Aventador is a pretty amazing car. I mean, I'm pretty jealous, to be honest, of John Reed. He's got a pretty good lifestyle. Who's going to be angry about going out and road testing and tuning a 1200 horsepower supercar? Those packages are unbelievable. And I guess what's kind of blowing me away a little bit is coming to the US here and the scale of the country, the size of the country, and the number of people out there. We were talking to Patrick from Underground Racing. Underground Racing, world famous for tuning Lamborghinis, previously the Gallardo and the Murcielago. And I talked to Patrick. They've punched through about 150 turbo conversions on Lamborghinis over the last 5 years. So that gives you some sense of scale of what these guys are producing. It's unbelievable, and these cars are seriously cool. From the outside, if it didn't have that Underground Racing sticker along the scuttle panel, you wouldn't even know it was modified. So Scott, to take that back to your experience, let's talk about some high horsepower stuff. What's the highest horsepower you've actually tuned?
A twin turbo V8 methanol drag car, around about 4,000 horsepower.
4,000?
4,000. So,
that gives John some work to do to catch up.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a drag car. These guys are running 1,200 horsepower road cars, and it's just really been unheard of until now.
I think if I'm right as well, I think they're offering a 2-year warranty on these engines, so it's a pretty ballsy move.
I've never warranted a 1,200 horsepower engine that I've ever been involved with.
I guess if you're dropping 500 grand on an Aventador in the first place, you're probably going to want some reliability with that power plant. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that 4,000 horsepower. So how did you go about that? That's pretty insane. I don't know too many dynos that would hold that sort of power.
Interestingly, historically we've been involved with some really serious drag cars in Australia, especially when the turbo V8 scene sort of really kicked off. And what you would find is we would tune on a chassis dyno which was rated at 600 horsepower static load, 1,000 horsepower. And what we found was that you could literally put a 4,000 horsepower engine, race car on a dyno and create some form of a map. I mean, I wouldn't say you were mapping the engine, but you'd certainly get a lot of figures done before you even fire the engine up.
Sure. And
most of these engines aren't designed to run for more than a few seconds, so you don't have much time. And what we would do is we would literally wind it up, get a base, run a low wastegate pressure if possible, and even then a mild, usually they've got maybe 20 psi on a wastegate spring, you'll still be making 2,500 horsepower. But what we would find is that you could grab enough load on the tyres and on the dyno to generate enough load to get some sort of a dyno pull to give you at least an idea of where it was at. And I think you'll find they're a lot easier to tune than some of the milder cars.
So you're kind of getting to a point where you're just getting enough numbers into the ECU so you can actually
go to the track.
Yeah.
Because
and that's where you're really starting to do the tuning.
And most of the tuning at the track is not about making the car go fast. It's about trying to harness all that horsepower, because it's almost impossible to harness that horsepower.
I think that's one area that a lot of people don't understand from the sidelines. When you're talking cars like Pro Mod cars, twin turbo, 4,000 horsepower, I mean, basically those cars have got enough power to overpower the track the whole way down the track at any point. So from the tuner's perspective, you're working with, if it's got a clutched gearbox, you're working with the clutch guy to tune the power delivery, and generally we're doing this with boost versus speed or boost versus gear to try and tune that power delivery to suit whatever the track adhesion is at the time. And really the guy who gets that closest to the mark is the guy who wins on the day, correct?
Yes, and I think once you've found a balance, and most teams can find like a setting that will get the car down the track, and most of the time the engine is so undertuned, you're pulling as much power as you can possibly find to get out of it, to get out of the hole, and it's more about reading the track, and that's the key. The track can change in a number of minutes. What was a good track for that setting may not be. So it's about the ability of the team to read the track the moment the car's going to make it there. And
let's talk about how you'd use data logging or data analysis on the car to help you do that job in a drag application. What are you looking for to try and improve that power delivery and get the most to the track?
Well, I think in terms of data acquisition, most of the really, really, really high horsepower engines, the data acquisition systems are, I wouldn't say limited, but they're not as sophisticated as the ones that I'm used to using on high-end race cars, circuit type cars. But certainly the six-cylinder base 2,000 horsepower style clutch cars, they're becoming a fine-tuned Swiss watch to try to tune at the track, and data acquisition is everything. So usually what happens is you'll get a number of passes and you'll just sit there and read and read. I've spent countless hours late at night in front of the television before sleeping, just reading logs, just trying to decipher and trying to find that edge in terms of how can we get this thing. We can find every bit of time we can, and you're usually talking 1/10 of a second is the difference between a good pass and an average pass.
1/10 of a second is a hell of a lot of time when you're talking about those sort of cars. In terms of that, what sort of times was that car running?
That car was running a 650, and the one that I was involved with, that was a couple of years ago, and now there are a few others, associates that I'm involved with, that they're running 5s in Australia now. It's quite commonplace, and using similar engine packages, similar technology, and just much more advanced chassis. I think chassis development's come a long way. Yeah, the engines have progressed.
Again, though, it comes down to really the engines are producing more power than the car can take. So we caught up with Joe Signorelli when we were over in Sydney for World Time Attack. He's got a Mustang that he's brought out of the US, a Pro Mod car. 4,000 horsepower. I think he's set the record for the fastest turbo car in Australia. 595, 267 mile an hour, and we were talking to him about those challenges as well of just getting that power to the ground. So
I think you'll find with Joe, he's been involved with 6-cylinder turbocharged engines, which are
completely different.
They're a hard thing to get down the track at faster, and when you manage to somewhat master that, it may be a little bit easier to get a big, powerful engine and a really good chassis that's capable of holding that power. It's not inconceivable to see those times these days.
Okay, let's move on. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about, when we were in Australia, we caught up with Bo Yates, and I know that you were a little instrumental in the tuning of his Toyota 86 drift car, and we're seeing cars are becoming more complicated. Particularly, I've got my own 86, so I know the combination quite well. You're talking a FA20 4-cylinder horizontally opposed boxer engine. It's running a combination of port injection and direct injection, which is relatively new. We've got GDI engines that have been around for a while, but that combination is not super common. And MoTeC had brought out their M150 plug-and-play combination for that, and I think you were probably one of the first anywhere in the world to get that combo running on Bo's car. How did that work out?
Well, Bo's cars are slightly different to your normal GT86, where it's a dedicated race car, so it's not exactly a GT86 as such in terms of vehicle integration, plug-in packages, but yeah, we had a reasonably easy time getting the M150 incorporated into the vehicle. He made a number of steps to somewhat dumb down the car to suit his driving styles. So he removed some of the factory, factory things such as drive-by-wire and direct injection.
Yeah.
And I think now, I think he really didn't realise the technology that was available today, and I think we'll be spending some of the time reintroducing some of this technology.
Now, you've been reasonably instrumental with that, and when we were in Australia, we talked to Jamie from MoTeC about the new M1 series of ECUs, and one of the areas I wanted to talk to you about was the M1 build software, and basically that's quite a new concept for guys at our level. Basically, it's allowing you to develop your own firmware. So you buy an M150 or one of the M1 ECUs from MoTeC, and effectively it's a blank sheet of paper. Using M1 Build, you can then develop your own firmware. So let's say you wanted to do a direct injection engine, you can do that. If you wanted to control a paddle shift gearbox, you could introduce that as well. So what's been your experience with that M1 Build so far?
Well, the M1 build with Bo's car is probably one of the first few M1s that I've been involved with, and basically we were presented a package that would allow us to get the engine fired up and so forth. And MoTeC generally we could literally contact their engineers and speak to them about what we wanted from the vehicle and from the package, and they were able to write certain inclusions that we required. Now at this level of development of the car, it's not many. We basically, they already knew what we needed to get the car fired up and competing, and I gave them a specification of things that we would like to get done, and it was literally no problem. So they offer this service. Obviously, they're helping Bo out to help promote the packages and the way the system works. But yeah, basically anyone who can write scripts and write code has the ability to essentially make the ECU do whatever they want to do.
And we're kind of talking a bit of a crossover now, because we're getting, we've got, I'm a tuner, but I'm certainly not a computer programmer, and it's kind of linking those two aspects together. So if you really want to make the most of M1 Build and write something really specific, you actually have to have some basic understanding of programming to write those scripts. So it is a complicated system. I guess, what do you see down the line? Take it away from the 86. Obviously cars are getting more complicated. We've got more features being introduced. CAN bus is becoming more complicated with everything talking together. Where do you see that M1 Build being an advantage maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the track?
I think 2, 3, 4 years down the track, it's an advantage because they have a platform that has the ability for the user to make changes and to write their own engine management system, if they will. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to get that complicated that engine management suppliers are going to struggle to be able to put the manpower into getting vehicle integration going, so they can continue to supply to that style of a market. So the way they've modelled it, it now gives the ability to the user to literally go away and if they want to get that Aventador twin turbo package integration done, well, it's really not on MoTeC's. It's not up to them anymore.
You can take it away from MoTeC and take it into a third party.
And no doubt they will help and assist whenever needed. But what that does allow is that I think what will happen is, much like I was tuning my E6 Haltech many years ago with a 386 computer, and now the level is increased somewhat. I think it will just follow the same evolution, and it'll be just commonplace.
Now, in essence as well, we were talking a little bit earlier, so that concept, the M1 build software where you can write your own firmware, well, while that's a brand new concept for me, and it's a brand new concept at this level of the market, it isn't a brand new concept really, because the professional level of motorsport ECUs, and we're talking Bosch Motorsport, we're talking perhaps the McLaren control ECU like we'd see in Formula One and NASCAR, that's exactly the business model those guys are using, although obviously we're talking maybe €20,000 for an ECU. It's out of the reach of the street car guy, and those teams obviously have the budgets to spend, and they get the McLaren engineers in to write that firmware code. So I guess it's a trickle down effect.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, moving on, I guess, with cars becoming more complicated like we've talked about, let's forget about MoTeC and M1 build for a moment. What do you see coming up as the challenges for us as tuners to cater for these latest model cars coming out?
I think the challenge will be that the tuning profession is at a level now, and it's a lot higher than it was, but tuners evolved from mechanics turning screwdrivers, and now there's a combination of mechanics, but there's more technical level people tuning cars, and they tend to learn the engine side of things afterwards. And I think what's going to happen, the next level will be that we're all going to have to become computer programmers.
It seems like that's the way it's going.
So, and I just don't think that at a lot of levels that certainly in Australia that I can see that being feasible in terms of economics for people to be able to have the time and the budgets to afford to pay these tuning shops to develop a special package for their vehicle. But
so we might end up seeing cars becoming maybe more expensive to modify, and
maybe, yeah,
perhaps it's going to actually weed out the tuning market down to those who actually want to operate at that kind of level and really learn those new skills that currently we don't have to worry about.
Yeah, or maybe, I mean, I think there's always going to be that grassroots club car.
Sure, of course.
Where we're tuning these club cars and drag cars and street level drag racing.
That's not going to go away anytime soon.
It's not going to go away,
yeah.
And I can't see that that type of car is going to need this type of level of engine management even still.
Okay. Hey, cool. Scott, thank you very much for having a chat to us about all of this. We are going to finish up now with our 5 questions, just so those out there listening in can get a better idea of what you do and who you are when you're not necessarily involved in cars. We'll start with, though, what was your first car?
It was a 1981 Datsun Stanza.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. What about favourite car that you've owned?
1981 model Datsun Stanza.
Not often that your first car would also be your favourite car. What's the impetus behind that? What makes that so special to you?
I still own it.
Yeah.
I still have it. I got it when I was 15. I'm 36 now.
Wow.
And I've had a lot of good times in it, and it taught me everything. I learned how to build an engine on it. I learned how to tune carburetors. I learned how to do engine management.
It taught you everything.
It taught me everything, and I had some good times in it at the same time.
Okay. What's your favourite food, moving away from cars
Steak.
completely? Steak? Good steak?
Good steak, rarest you can get it.
Yeah, nice.
Biggest you can get it.
Still kicking?
Still kicking.
Okay. What do you do to chill out when you're not playing with cars? If you ever get a chance to chill out, that is.
Look at data logs.
Sweet, that's really exciting, Scott.
I mean, I enjoy nightlife. I was a competition pistol shooter, and I do a bit of sort of shooting as well. So target shooting and so forth. So that's another one of my hobbies.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a little bit different outside of the car scene.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you could choose any car and any track in the world, what would it be and where would it be?
I would say Ayrton Senna's 1988 model McLaren, and I'd like to drive it at Monaco, where he crashed it.
That's pretty specific, eh? Yeah, cool. Okay. Thanks again for coming on board with us, Scott, here. And again, if you guys out there have got any questions for Scott, we will be coming back. Scott's not going anywhere, and we will have a question and answer session with him a little bit later on. Now we're going to move on to a video we shot today. We caught up with the guys from Forge Motorsports, and they've got this amazing little vdub hill climb car. I couldn't quite figure out what it was or what they'd done to it, but what I did know is it looked amazing. It's got some pretty wild aero on it. So we caught up with Peter and got a little bit of insight into what makes that car tick. So let's check out that video now.
Hey guys, it's Andre from the High Performance Academy. We're here with Peter from Forged Motorsports. He's come all the way from the UK with this insane little vdub here. Now, Peter, I don't even know what we're really looking at with this vdub. Can you explain, first of all, the concept of what the car was built for?
Sure, yeah. We were looking to build a track car that represented the main part of the company. We're pretty much Euro, VAG based. Wanted something that we could showcase all the products, the fabrication, the CNC machining, all the ideas that the engineers have got there. So a few of the customers came to us. They were looking for something retro, wanted a retro build, something a little bit different. We don't really do too much normally aspirated stuff, so we wanted to add something with a turbo, something that we can showcase the intercoolers, our turbo partners, our radiators, our aluminium fabrication. So a 1.8T engine became our engine of choice, really.
Let's just go back one step. So it's a vdub. What is the actual chassis?
I'm sorry. So VW Golf Mark 1, or a Rabbit in the US, 1979. Took the basic GTI motor, threw it away, stripped it out, acid dip, so a ground up restoration right from the floor up.
So what have you actually built this to compete in? I mean, looking at it, to me, it's kind of got that Group B rally car sort of era look to it. You've got a lot of aero going on. What are you actually competing with it?
The Group B thing was always at the back of our mind. A lot of the guys that, as I say, work for Forge are just crazy for retro. There's a German hill climb championship in Germany called the Berg Cup. That's BERG if anybody wants to Google it. Just insane retro, from your BMW, your Mercedes, your Porsche, your Opel, crazy aero, crazy builds, crazy budgets. And we wanted to build something kind of in tribute to that with the aero, low down, gnarly, a gnarly build, and I think we've managed to achieve that pretty much.
It's an insane looking car for sure. Let's talk about the power plant. So what have you done there to that engine, and what sort of power is it producing?
Okay, we went with the 1.8T motor to start with. Decided we probably weren't going to get enough power down through that particular motor. Stroked it out to 2 litre. Went with the Garrett GTX 2860. That was, after consultation with those guys, this was going to give us the lowdown power that we wanted, and sizable horsepower. First sort of foray into the mapping, saw it let go on the dyno at 550 horsepower. We had a little bit of an issue with the map then. We backed it off, got back with our ECU guys, MoTeC out of the UK, backed that off to 400 horsepower, 300 foot-pounds of torque, 15 PSI, 1.1 bar, in a 850 kilo, 1,500 pounds in weight, and we were kind of where we needed to be. But as I say, there was a number of teething problems along the way.
Nothing's ever simple when you're trying to build a car at this level. So that's still quite a lot of power though, and if I understand correctly, it's still front-wheel drive?
Yeah, there was some debate about maybe going R32 platform, going 4-wheel drive. Decided to leave it pure front-wheel drive. We run anti-lag, and we've got launch control with the MoTeC, so with the right drivers in there, we can get it down. As the car is still really doing its PR rounds, we got to get more in sync with the car and what it will do on the track and for the hill climb when it's finished its PR journey.
Cool. Okay, so you've got around 400 brake horsepower. That's a lot of power to get to the ground. What's the transmission that you're running?
We got we're running the standard Golf running gear. Transmission, we went gearbox wise. We started off with a good sequential box. Had some issues with that because we knew the nature of the car was to do this tour of duty, if you like. We needed to get out to the USA, needed to have the guys be able to drive the car without too many issues. So unfortunately, we had to do away with the sequential box, and we went with a 5-speed Seat Leon diesel box. It's a little bit long, 4th to 5th. But it's more than capable. It's kind of bomb-proof in a car of this build. So that's where we're at with it right now. We may go back to sequential when we get it back, but for now, that's where we're going to stay.
It doesn't really matter what gearbox you're running, if it's sequential or not, if it won't hold together. So yeah. I can understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the electronics package in the car. You've mentioned the MoTeC ECU. It's not a brand I'm personally familiar with. What is the rest of the electronics package in the car?
Just on the MoTeC, little known British brand. Been working on bespoke tuning, custom ECU software. Fits really well with the motor we wanted to build. Those guys were great in helping us achieve what we needed. Good old British engineering. Got a point of flag for Britain on that. Again, with the AEM dash, just trying to make it look sexy, being able to have as much diagnostics as the guys need to see, exhaust gas temperature, oil temp, whatever is going on, and a build this complicated, well, complicated for us, and so they can check the information out. When we're running, we tend to be running with two guys in the car because it's a new build for us. We're gaining experience. One's kind of pressing the buttons, looking to see where we're at, whether we're pushing the limits too hard. In certain areas, we certainly were pushing the boost too high when it let go at 500 horsepower, but live and learn.
Talking about that as well, I understand you're running this on a pump fuel as well?
Yeah, pump gas. Obviously, the better the fuel we put in it, the better it'll run, but it's street legal in the UK, passed all the government. We have an MOT, Ministry of Transport test to keep the cars legal on the street. We thought it'd be kind of fun to have a car that looked this insane and then see it driving down the high street. So that was more for the PR, but yeah, it's all as it is, really.
Cool. Okay, let's talk about the aero on the car, and as you said yourself, it's a pretty insane aero package. Have you actually done any testing or validation of that aero package, or has it just been a case of what looks right?
Yeah, I'd like to tell you we've had it in the Myra tunnels, but I can't make that stuff up. The guys are pretty experienced. 2 or 3 of the guys have worked on dedicated race car builds, so we've had to use their experience on what we think will work at the moment. We certainly get a tremendous amount of downforce. When we get back, we're going to go all carbon flat floor. But the schedule of the UK shows, getting it to Sema and then getting it out to our Asia office has demanded that the aero at this moment remains untested in wind tunnel. Should we get back to the UK probably end of 2015? We may look to go down that route before. We would really like to take it in and drive it in anger out on the German hill climbs, to put it in the environment for which it was built, but some way off for that at the moment.
Sure. Well, it's definitely an insane little car. It's got to probably be one of the most developed vdubs that I've ever seen. Anyway, it's a real testament to what Forged Motorsport are doing. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to have a chat to us today, Peter, and we wish you all the best once you get this thing out on the track.
No worries. Thank you very much for stopping by and taking an interest. Thank you very much.
That's a pretty cool little car, and Peter from Forged Motorsports in the UK is a bit of a demon. He's brought that car all the way over to the US. He's doing a tour all around the US. The thing's going to be competing at Buttonwillow in a Superlat competition next weekend, and they really don't have a lot of experience with the car, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Now, if you just joined us, you're watching Tuner Life. I'm Andre from the High Performance Academy. I'd like to thank our sponsor for tonight, Vipec. You can check out their new I-Series range of ECUs at vipec.com. Also, huge props to GT Channel for letting us stream live tonight. If you want to check out all the latest and greatest automotive videos on the internet, make sure you subscribe to their channel. And if you like what you see tonight and you want to learn more about the latest in tuner products, make sure you subscribe to us. Search for Learn to Tune on YouTube. Okay, so unfortunately we couldn't get John Reed here. He's still stuck out there somewhere. So while we were at Sema, we were checking out all of the coolest cars there. We came across this Camaro that had an LS engine swap, and that LS engine swap out there, particularly in the older American muscle cars, it's become one of the things to do. We stumbled upon this car on the Autometer stand, and it looks like a 100% show car. It's absolutely amazing. The paint's immaculate, the bodywork is immaculate, and one look under the bonnet and the thing just, attention to detail was perfect. The interesting thing though is Randy, who owns this car, beats up on this car. He beats the hell out of the car. It's driven like it's supposed to. So let's go to an interview with Randy and check out his Camaro now. Hey guys, it's Andre from the High Performance Academy. We're here with Randy from D&Z Customs to have a chat to him about this amazing Camaro. Now, Randy, it's a beautiful looking car. Can you tell me, it's obviously packing some serious power as well. Can you tell me for a start, let's look at the engine combination. What have you got in there?
What we have is we started out with a LS7 based engine, Wegner Automotive back home by me in Wisconsin. Put the car together. We stroked the engine from being a normal 427 to a 441 using the Cali's crank and rods. We got Weisco pistons in there. We're using a RHS LS7 based heads with titanium valves, custom ground comp cam, and valve springs and lifters. We've got a fast 102 intake on it, and we're using a 90 millimeter throttle body right now just for drivability response. For oiling system, instead of using the traditional GM LS7 based oiling, we've got a daily dry sump pan, billet pan with a separate two-stage pump on it. Really improves it.
Let me just talk a little bit about that dry sump system, because the factory LS7 runs a type of dry sump system, and you've gone away from that and gone to the daily engineering system. Why did you do that?
Mainly because I built this car with the intention of doing a lot of track day stuff. That's what I like, I enjoy. And going with the aftermarket dry sump is just a step above. I mean, the GM setup is great, but when you're really hammering through those carousels and doing a lot of track days, the factory just doesn't keep up with what's needed for the oiling demands on this. You're talking high RPMs, a lot of lateral loads, so going with the daily dry sump system, it just made total sense, and it's a beautiful piece.
Now, talking about RPM, it's quite a big capacity engine. Now, what sort of RPM is it actually running to?
It's got capabilities of running all the way up to 7,500 RPM.
Wow, that's some serious RPM. What compression ratio is it running?
It's 11.5 to 1.
So you're still running that on a normal pump fuel?
93 octane.
And what sort of power are you getting out of it?
Well, we're getting about 700 to the flywheel.
Wow, it's a serious amount of power as well. What is your engine management solution? How are you actually controlling the engine?
We're using a GM-based, GM Performance computer and harness that they sell, and we're tuning it with HB tuners. I have another shop that I work with, West Bend Dyno Tuning, and they use HB tuners exclusively on a lot of the GM stuff, and we tune it on their two-wheel drive dyno. It works out great. You get everything dialed in 100%.
Now, that GM Performance ECU that you talk about, these LS swaps are so common these days, and GM Performance are making things really easy. So basically this is a package you can buy specifically for an engine swap with a harness and with an ECU that you can then program with a number of the aftermarket packages we've got, correct?
Correct, yeah. It comes with the harness, the computer, a MAF sensor, oxygen sensors, the pedal assembly, so you got your drive-by-wire pedal if that's the system you go with. All the relays and fuses that are required. It's a really complete package, and the pricing point on it is actually really good too.
Have you retained the drive-by-wire throttle?
Yes, I did.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was the fuel system on the car. What are you running there?
What we have is we got a stainless gas tank made by Rick's Tanks, but we use what they call a vapor work system, and it's got two separate pickup points on each corner that are baffled around. And then it uses a ZL1 GM fuel pump assembly, which is capable of quite a high horsepower level. And being that our car is naturally aspirated, it's plenty of fuel pump. And I can run this thing just about to empty and not starve it for fuel.
Now, just to go back a little bit as well, when you said you've got the GM Performance package and you said that came with the MAF sensor or the airflow meter for the engine, are you running it with the MAF sensor, or have you gone to a speed density system?
We're using the MAF sensor. Speed density is all right to use, but we do like to tune with the MAF sensor. It just helps with these are street cars, helps with drivability and just everyday kind of use. The responsive is so much cleaner.
And with a combination like this, it's a fairly extreme engine, and it's obviously an engine swap into an older chassis. Over here in the US, your emissions laws are pretty strict. Have you got any trouble getting a combination like this to meet emission standards?
No, usually we go and judge things by the areas that we have to worry about. Every state has their own emission standards that they have to keep. Fortunately, where I live and this car is built, it falls underneath a collector car part, and it doesn't have to meet any standards above 1970.
That makes life pretty easy. Now, you're also entered this weekend in the Ultimate Street Car Challenge, and that's pretty interesting. I mean, you've got a car that's totally show car quality, but obviously you beat up on this thing pretty hard. Tell us what the Street Car Challenge is all about.
The Ultimate Streetcar Challenge is something that Optima Batteries and Johnson Controls put together to basically seek out cars like this that are sitting on the SEMA floor that are known as being trailer queens. And they want these cars to come out, all these cool parts on these, performance brakes, performance suspension, engines, transmissions. You know, get out there, use it. Let's see what this thing really is built for. Or is it really just a trailer queen? You know, put your money where your mouth is kind of thing. And they're wanting to find that car that the owner or the car builder just built something that's phenomenal, you know, and prove it.
I like the fact that you're not just building this car to be a trailer queen and sit in the garage. It's cool you're going to get out and use it. Now, we'll like to try and get along and have a look at the Streetcar Challenge on the weekend. I thank you for taking the time to chat to us today, Randy, and we wish you all the best for the weekend.
Thank you. I enjoyed the
We really like Randy's style. That Camaro is absolutely immaculate, and I love the fact that he beats up on it and drives that thing how it's supposed to be driven. I can't imagine it's too easy to make a Camaro like that handle really well, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes in that Streetcar Challenge. Okay, so to move on, we've still got Scott here on the couch, and we've got a question and answer tuner chat session with Scott. Again, if you do have any questions that you want to put to Scott, feel free to send them through in the comments section and we'll answer those. We've got a few preloaded here though, Scott. We've got Alice here in our studio audience who's fired through a few questions as well. So the first question I've got is, how do you go about choosing an ECU to suit your application or a customer's application? What do you look for?
Well, the first thing I do is I obviously want to know what we're actually doing with the car, but if it's a factory style car, we just basically got to make sure that the ECU's got enough power to handle you know, a vehicle integration for that car, and also the customer's budget. We need to keep that in mind.
So of course, if you're looking at a street car versus Tilton, obviously at the upper end of the spectrum, the products you're choosing are going to be vastly different.
They will be. Sometimes they can be. Most, for my business in particular, is more gold towards a more higher end customer if possible, and that doesn't necessarily mean more money. And yeah, I mean, in most of our applications, you know, we would use VIPEC plug-in systems for cars that it's available with, or you know, VIPEC, they have a range of V88s, V44s, which are 4 and 8 channel ECUs. For more customised applications at that sort of level, yeah.
Okay. The next question I had was, what's your favourite type of dyno? I'm sure you've used a bunch of different dynos, and you know, what have you found to work really well?
Well, I think eddy current engine dynos are my favourite type. We don't have one in the shop, but that's not really good for a day-to-day business. But we use a Aerodynamics roller dyno, which is very good for turning jobs over. But I think my favourite dyno in terms of a vehicle would be a Dynapack hub dyno. I think
that's a great choice. I also think the same, which is why I've got one.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I think that gives the best, allows you to get the best of the loads and so forth, and more resolution in your tune-up.
Do you find, one of the things with the hub dyno, which I guess was back in the day why I chose it, was wheel spin's just not an issue. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they've got their advantages and they've got some disadvantages as well. It's much quicker typically to get a car ready to do a run on a rolling road than on a Dynapack. How do you find your dyno dynamics? Is it an issue with wheel spin on high-powered cars?
It can be an issue, but depending on the suspension geometry of the vehicle, like a circuit race car, it tends to be a problem. Live axle cars...
And hold on, we're talking that because you've got a lot of camber on the car, so your tyre contact patch on the roller is actually quite narrow.
Yeah, a live axle car can handle a lot of horsepower with limited slip, without a lot of slip. The only... one of the advantages, though, I have found with a roller dyno is tuning high horsepower front wheel drives, where in some cases the client it doesn't want to sort of unduly load their feeble transmissions with all this horsepower, and hub dyno has absolutely zero slip, as you know, which is great for the engine. In some cases, can really put quite a bit of load on the transmission side of things. So there's no perfect
solution for everything. Okay, the other question I've got here, or another question I've got here is, what do you consider to be the best fuel to tune on? We've obviously got a lot of options these days. There's pump fuels, E85 or ethanol blends are becoming more popular, and then there's the full race fuels, C16, Q16, and maybe methanol. What's your favourite fuel?
Well, I guess I'll start with my first. We started with petrol. 98 fuels was the first fuels that I ever tuned with, but my favourite when I first started tuning was C16.
Yep.
And I was blown away with what we could get away with that, and the power that we're seeing. But I think today at high-end motorsport level, if I had my way, I'd like to be running the cars on methanol.
Yeah.
It's just a very interesting fuel to deal with, and there's unusual tuning issues associated with it. So whether it is the best fuel for any given application, it might not be good in a race car because obviously how much you maybe need to carry with you, but it's the most interesting fuel, I think, to tune with.
Okay, so when you're saying it's got some interesting characteristics, what characteristics are you talking about?
Well, I guess one of the first challenges is to try to make sure that your fuel system doesn't have maintenance issues.
Sure.
And if you can get over that hurdle, I think most people will find that it can be a forgiving fuel.
So when we talk maintenance issues, it's very corrosive to aluminium. So that's one of the biggest downfalls, I guess, with methanol fuel. It's going to corrode your fuel tank or your fuel pump, potentially your lines. Also the fuel rail if it's made out of aluminium, so that's one consideration.
And it's sitting around all the time,
exactly.
So most people aren't driving their vehicles every day with it.
Let's look at it from a tuner's perspective though. What are the advantages when you've actually got that thing bolted up on a dyno and you're ready to run?
I think the knock limit is just, you know, it's insane, and the boost levels that you can get away with. We run boost levels commonly run boost levels of almost triple digits and into triple digits on a piston engine is almost, it's mind-boggling, and I don't know of any fuel that would let me get away with that without an intercooler, for example. So
totally. So it's resistance to detonation. It's got such a massive cooling property that it helps cool that combustion charge, and even as you're saying, 70, 80 psi of boost. Basically, the engine's not knock limited, so you can actually just optimise the tune.
You can, yeah.
And
I mean, there's other aspects involved with the methanol that are sometimes very hard to pick up in your tune. So it's just interesting fuel. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, what has been your favourite engine to tune? What do you like tuning?
I'm not sure if I have a favourite engine. I have different I guess I have some favourites because every engine has a different challenge.
Sure. And
they're not all the same, although they are all, at the end of the day, an air pump, so they are the same, but they are different. I would have to say some of the Honda variants, the K-Series Honda variants, would possibly be some of the favourite engines. B-Series Honda engines, which are the older, highly strung engines that really can be mind-blowing what you can do with those engines for not doing a lot to them.
Honda definitely build one of the best naturally aspirated small capacity engines out there, and they also take really well to boost pressure as well.
Yes.
It's insane what they can make. Okay, moving along, with the Tilt and Evo, going back to World Time Attack and Superlap sort of stuff, what were the challenges you faced with tuning a car for that sort of event?
I think the biggest challenge is to juggle up the horsepower to the time that you're trying to achieve, and the horsepower to the survivability of the engine.
Sure.
The engine package is, albeit the 4G63 is an awesome engine, and it's awesome. Maybe, I mean, it's a rally designed engine. It's come about from many years of refinement, but it was never designed to make upwards of 1,000 horsepower for kilometres and kilometres. And that's one of the big challenges.
We've definitely had our ups and downs with those engines and drag applications, and in that application we're running a lot of boost pressure and a lot of power, but we also only have to do it for maybe 7, 8, 9 seconds at a time. So doing that for a minute 20, a minute 30, a full lap around Eastern Creek is a big challenge. So I can get that. Next question I've got is, what's your favourite ECU to tune? You've obviously tuned a lot.
I'd say the subject's complicated. My favourite ECU to tune, if a vehicle was to turn up and I was to plug into it, would be a Vipac. It is, I know it inside out,
Yeah.
and it's really, I can get to a result quickly.
Yeah.
As you get older, you tend to find that you're familiar with every ECU, so it's harder to get a favourite. But I would say that's my favourite from a day to day, and yeah.
I think I find from, again, tuning a lot of different ECUs, what you'll find is one brand will do one particular thing really, really well, and you're like, yep, that's brilliant, I love that function. And yet then there'll be something else where another brand will do it much better, and you sort of get to a point where, if they do it like this, we'd have the perfect combination. So I guess no one does everything absolutely perfectly.
No, I think,
and also I guess it's a personal preference as well.
Of course, I think all ECUs have good points in them. So
Yeah.
so there are certain idiosyncrasies you find with one ECU and that you don't like, and the other one you do like. So I think that it is personal preference a lot of the time, but the higher end ECUs you tend to find you get a bit more excited about because they can do so much more stuff. So
yeah,
that's another aspect to look at.
Last question I had for you, Scott, tonight was, do you prefer tuning on an engine dyno or a chassis dyno?
Engine dyno.
Every time?
Every time.
Yeah. And why would you say that?
Usually they're air conditioned. I mean, as you get older, you find in the early times of tuning, I would like to be sitting in that car and feeling the horsepower. And as you get a little bit older, you get a bit more refined in what you want out of your tune.
Yeah, sure.
And not so much want to be sitting in the car enjoying the whole ride and the uncomfortable environment that a race car might give you at times.
Yeah, I've tuned my fair share of methanol cars on a chassis dyno, and you get to the end of that run and your eyes are watering, you can't breathe, and you're basically just waiting for that car to come back to idle so you can bail out of that dyno cell and go and get some fresh air.
It's not a very social life tuning.
Not so much. Maybe a side of it that a lot of people don't maybe understand or see. So yeah, engine dyno is definitely a nice way of doing it. You're separated from the engine, you don't have to worry about that. Look, again, Scott, thanks very much for coming in. You've got some really interesting stories, and congratulations again on your win with the Tilton Evo. Can't wait to see what that car does next year. I'm sure it's only going to go faster. I think might have a little bit more competition stacked up maybe next year.
Hopefully we do.
Everyone seems to be raising the game. Okay, so thank you guys for joining us here tonight. This is our last show here from Sema in Las Vegas. Again, I'd really like to thank ViPEC for sponsoring the show tonight. Again, check out their latest I-Series range of ECUs at vipec.com. Thanks again to the GT channel for letting us stream here. And if you want to check out all of those latest videos on automotive videos on the internet, make sure you subscribe to GT channel. If you do want to learn more about EFI tuning, check us out, High Performance Academy at learntotune.com. Now, this is us for Sema. We're out of here. We've had a great time. It's been a real buzz, and we've seen some cool cars, some cool new products, and we've got to talk to some really smart guys, which is great. Now, we'll be back in about a month's time in December. We're going to PRI, the Performance Racing Industry Show in Indianapolis. We're going to basically be doing a very similar thing from there, so look forward to Tuner Life coming to you next from Indianapolis.